Hi folks, welcome to this video on practice methods, types of practice, whichever you want to call it. So this is a section looking about how would you coach individual skills to a performer. Now there are 4 key ways that we can coach skills and think about coaching skills. That's whole, part, whole, and progressive part. So let's quickly start with a definition of each of these. So whole skill, as you'd expect, is a skill taught in its entirety. It's not broken down into its subroutines, into its parts, things like that. So what this part of the course is about is thinking about, imagine you were coaching a set of skills. There are some skills that you would just coach fully. You wouldn't break the skill down. And we call those whole skills. So, think it might be like a golf swing, something that's very fast, very difficult to break down. So they're what's classified as whole skills, whole practice methods. Part practice is exactly the opposite of whole. The skill is broken down into parts and subroutines. So they're the skills that maybe you think I can definitely break that down into parts, into subroutines and coach it bit by bit. Now, as I've put here, below are the variations, i.e. these two are different ways of teaching parts, hence why they both contain the word part. So let's have a look at each of these now. So whole, part, whole, the skill is taught as a whole. You then identify weaknesses within that skill and then work on them in isolation. So you work on the part that is weak and then you build it back into the whole skill again. Hence why this technique is called whole, part, whole. So let's say you're coaching the triple jump and you would teach them how to do the triple jump, and then you took a step back and you noticed as their coach, that step is really weak. The hop's okay, the jump at the end's not bad, but the step is the part that lets them down. You would then work on that part, that subroutine in isolation, and then when you were happy that you'd improved the step, you then build it back into the full triple jump and you see the full triple jump again and see if you've made the improvement. So you've gone from the whole to working to a part of it, and then you've built it back into a whole again. And finally, progressive part, these are routines essentially that are taught and where one skill that you've taught then moves into the next one. So again, we could use a triple jump as an example of that because the hop flows into the step and flows into the jump. But think about any dance routines. Max Whitlock and the likes of, Niall Wilson on the high bar routine, where one skill goes into the next. You would not just demonstrate a 60-second floor routine and go, right, off you go. You would teach them the first part, then you would progress that into the second part, then the third part. So a prime example there would be teaching them how to do a turn, and then teaching them how to do a kick, and then teaching them how to do the turn and kick together. Then you would progress that by showing them the leap, and then you would do turn, kick, leap, one after the other. So you gradually progress and add the next element on as you go along. So what we're about to do now is go through these and go through the pros and cons of each one, when you would use it, when it wouldn't be such a good idea to use, so the advantages and disadvantages. What I've not done is, I've not done one on parts, simply because the answers and the points that are relevant to whole, part, whole and progressive part are relevant to part, because these are both variations of that. So I haven't done a mind map on this. That's because the mind map for these two cover that part there, okay? Right, so classic example of when to use the whole practice method is when you've got a skill such as a golf swing. These are skills that are fast or dynamic, i.e. cannot be broken down. I can't do a whole, part, whole or a progressive part routine if I can't break the skill down. You can't break a golf swing down and coach it in parts, so we've got to use the whole practice method. It's often used when the skill is relatively simple, okay? i.e. I'm not saying a golf swing is easy, but I'm saying there aren't lots of joints moving in lots of different directions, okay, all at the same time. It's one steady fluid movement. It's also a very time-efficient method of coaching. If I'm not having to break the skill down and I'm teaching it in one go, I'm not wasting time trying to break skills down and then repeat them. So it's a very good method to use when you're short on time. As a result, it's also very good to use with large groups. if I've got a large group, I haven't got the time to break the skill down for every individual performer. So I'll try and teach the skill as a whole. However, I'll generally just try and use whole practice methods with autonomous, decent level performers, because if I've got beginners, they might not be able to handle all of that information in one go. I might have to break the skill down for a beginner a little bit. Even if it is quite a short skill, I might have to try and break it down a small amount so that they can handle it in bite-sized chunks, if you want to think of it like that. However, when is it not quite so good? What is it not good for? So I just lost my pen a second. With the whole method, it's very, very difficult, for me to work on and isolate weaknesses. Okay? It's very, very difficult for me to do that. But on the plus side, by teaching it as a whole, they've always got, my performers, a good feel for the movement, its fluidity. It flows very, very well. It doesn't look jerky or put together because they've only ever practiced it as a whole technique. So whole part whole then, again, this is where I'm breaking down a skill, isolating the certain weaknesses, and then building it back together again. I've got a picture of a triple jump here, showing, this kind of skill that I would probably use whole part whole practice on, as an example. So, what can we say about it? Great for skills that can be broken down. Skills that have things called subroutines, i.e. lots of things going on that make up the full performance. So in a triple jump, you've got the run up, the take off, the hop, the step, the jump. There's lots of subroutines that make up a triple jump. So any skill that has subroutines that can be broken down is a great, great time to use whole part whole method. As a result, it's generally done on more complex skills. Where if I tried to teach it as a whole, people would struggle to handle that level of information. So by breaking it down into parts, it makes it, turns it into bite-sized chunks that are a little easier to handle. As a result, though, it's quite a time-consuming method. It does take up quite a bit of time to break the skill down, work on faults, and then rebuild it back into the routine. Flipping over to that, it is very good for cognitive performers, beginners who, need the skill to be broken down a little bit to make better sense of it. But again, it's only going to work well with smaller groups. Think about people who coach anyone done gymnastics. You look at the coaching groups in gymnastics, groups of 3 or 4, because you're always, working on bits. Athletics groups, you never get a group of 20 triple jumpers together. You'll get 2 or 3 together because you've got to break the skill down for all of them. They've got to know the subroutines. They've got to be able to work on them. In contrast to the whole method, we can isolate weaknesses. We can work on weaknesses and build them back into the routine. But then there is a cost to that. The cost is that we often lose fluidity. If you're coaching a skill in parts, at some point you've got to put all those parts together. And they might not flow well if you're coaching the triple jump and you've worked on the step phase and you've worked on the jump phase and the hop phase independently, you've then got to put them all together and they've got to do hop, step, jump. They might not flow from one into the other quite so well, and it'll take a bit of time to get that to come off. So you might be sat there going, oh God, so when would you use each technique? These are the things that these are the decisions that you've got to make as a coach. There are always pros and cons, and you've got to make those calls. These are the factors you've got to take into consideration when you're deciding how to work on a particular type of skill or type of practice method, Finally, then, we've got progressive part. And what I've got here is just a picture from Classic Key Stage 1. This is primary school gymnastics. So, we're not always talking about elite athletes when we'd use these practice methods. We're talking about all abilities, all age groups, all sports. So here's years 1 to 2, and you've got there a nice little diagram of a gymnastics routine, stages 1 to 22. And imagine you had to teach that to a group of primary school students. You would use the progressive part method. So we teach it in parts and we progressively add it together. So what you do here is you teach them standing, Then you teach them crouch, and then you teach them standing into crouch. You would then teach them the 3/4 forward roll, and then you would go right, standing into crouch into 3/4 forward roll, sorry. Then you'd teach them how to do a teddy bear. And once they'd got that, you'd do right, standing into crouch, to forward roll, into teddy bear. So you'd progressively, you teach each part individually, but then progressively add it on to the parts that they've already done. And that is the classic way that you do progressive part practice. You could argue that you would even do triple jump like that from the previous slide. There's nothing wrong with that at all if you decide that that's the way you want to go. But gymnastics routine, Tom Daly and his dive routines will do it like this. Trampolinists, gymnasts, dancers, they will all use this kind of method to build up their skills. I've just quickly jotted down some familiar phrases here, so hopefully you'll see the common theme running through all of these. When would you use this method? I'm going to use it on routines. I'm going to use it when that's complex. You know, you wouldn't teach that in one go. That's a complex routine and made even more complex by the year group that you're teaching it to. So you're definitely going to use progressive part when it's quite a complex thing to put together. However, it's time consuming. Teaching that one stage at a time and gradually adding that to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, all the way through, that's going to take time. You're only going to do it with small groups, ideally, because, you know, teaching that to everyone, making sure everyone's got it right, make sure everyone's progressing, it's going to be very, you know, it's difficult to do with a small group, let alone a big group. Something I forgot on the last slide. What's another good reason to do whole part whole? Same with progressive part. Great for controlling danger. If you're coaching bits at a time and pieces at a time, you're controlling the danger very, very well. You're making sure they're nice and safe and secure before you move them on to the next stage. So apologies for that, something I forgot off the last slide. This one, great for cognitive and autonomous. Like I've said, these are cognitive performance key stage 1 years 1 and 2. These are elite level gymnasts, but equally, elite level gymnasts will not just put their Olympic routine together in one go and practice it. They will progressively add it together part by part, stage by stage. Okay? So what you've got to do on this topic is go, right, look at the question, which one is it asking about, or which two are they asking about? And then, is it an advantages, is it a disadvantages, is it a what factors would you take into consideration question? If it's what factors, you talk about them all. Ability level, the complexity of the skill, the group size, the danger levels, okay? Can the skill be broken down, can't be broken down? The fluidity issue, okay? If it's the disadvantages, you've just got to look at each one. What's the time situation like? What's the control of danger like? Because again, I forgot danger with whole method. If I teach the skill in one movement, I maybe increase the danger. So it's not good for dangerous tasks because, you know, I'm teaching it in one go, so I'm less able to control the danger. So you just got to think about all these factors and how they could affect your decision on which method to use. Okay, good luck with it, folks. Hope you found this useful.